We can't put the security of families at risk by taking away their health insurance, or unraveling the new rules on Wall Street, or refighting past battles on immigration when we've got to fix a broken system. And if a bill comes to my desk that tries to do any of these things, I will veto it. It will have earned my veto.
So the president setting a new record last night for the number of veto threats, 4 of them at last count. Ohio Senator Rob Portman was listening. He's on the Senate Finance Committee, as well as Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committees. You're in a lot of meetings, Senator. Good morning, and welcome back to America's Newsroom. What do you think of that? That was the 4 vetoes in one speech.
Yeah, it was kind of 2 speeches, wasn't it? The second part was about how we all need to work together, but the first part was kind of saying, I'm not going to work with you on all these priorities that you all have. You know, what concerns me is we do have some really good legislation to try to improve some of these regulations. The president said that we can't touch regulations in another part of the speech, as I recall. Let me give you an example, Bill. We have legislation that is bipartisan that says we ought to use cost-benefit analysis, including what the impact is on jobs, before we pass new regulations. Now, you know, why wouldn't the president want to do that? It's legislation that's already passed the House. It had some Democrat support. It has some Democrat support over here. I'm the author of it. I mean, I'm thinking, gee, he's just kind of said, I'm not even going to look at it. So at least I would hope he would look at this legislation before he makes a decision to veto it.
Well, you know, you were tweeting last night. You said 321,000 manufacturing jobs lost under President Obama, 401,000 construction jobs lost since the start of his presidency. Valerie Jarrett, just an hour ago, took great exception to any of that criticism. What would you say to her?
Well, I would say that I thought the president was talking about a different economy than the one I experienced when I'm back home. And that is, yeah, we see the unemployment number going down 5.6% now. That's good. But if you take into account the number of folks who have given up looking for work altogether, the so-called labor force participation rate is so low. The unemployment rate today, if it was the same labor force that it was when the president was elected, it would be 9.9%. That's what people feel. And then second, of course, wages are not up. Wages are down. Yeah, last month wages went down again. So this notion that everything's great, I think just doesn't square with reality for most of my constituents. Now, it's true that we had some economic growth. That's good. We got to be sure that economic growth is being shared. And we have a lot of ideas on that we want to work with the president on. He did talk about 3 last night, Bill, that I think could help. One is expanding trade, because I think more exports is going to create better, higher paying jobs. We know that. Second, he talked about the need to reform the tax system. After he talked about raising taxes, that's good, because workers are the ones that get hurt by the fact we have the highest rate in the world, and our corporate rate of any developed country. And third, he talked a little about worker retraining, which I think is really important, because we do have jobs out there but don't have the skills to meet them. So
I got you. Do you see that of those 3 is that small ball, or is that reaching for big American things?
Well, you know, look, I think we got to get done what we can with this president. You know, he's wanting to tax more and wanting to spend more and wanting to do the sorts of things that have gotten us into this record level of debt. By the way, we add another $7 trillion of debt over the next 10 years, even without the new spending the president talked about. So I think it's going to be tough for us to work together on some of these big projects. But tax reform is pretty big. Regulatory relief is important, we talked about. Worker retraining would be good. And if he wants to expand trade, Republicans want to work with him on that, because we think our workers should be able to have a level playing field. So there are a few things we can work with him on.
Okay, all right.
But the speech probably made it harder, not easier, because you know he was.
It's like third down and 1 here. You're trying to get 1 yard here for a first down. Final question, big thematic question here now. Based on what you heard last night, based on the midterm results of November, what can the American people expect over the next 2 years?
Well, first of all, it was an unusual speech, I thought, particularly the first half, because it was almost as if he wasn't speaking to a different chamber. This is now a chamber that's mostly Republican. There were a lot more people on the right side of the aisle than the left side of the aisle last night, and yet you wouldn't have thought that hearing the president speak. But look, I think the American people can expect Republicans are going to try to work with the president where we can. I think that's part of the message of the 2014 election. People are tired of the gridlock. We certainly want to resolve some of these big issues we talked about. Let's see what we can do. But it requires both sides being able to work together. And although the president talked about that generally in the second part of the speech, in the first part of the speech, as you indicate, he talked about a lot of vetoes, a lot of things he was going to block. And, you know, it was a pretty partisan speech for the first part. He gives a good speech. He always does.
We'll see.
But I think he missed an opportunity.
We'll see whether or not you get that first down. Senator, thank you. Rob Portman.
Thanks, Bill.
Republican
Always good
from
to talk
Ohio.
to you, buddy.
You as well.